All right, next up we've got Nicole, whose job is books.
Hi, Raylene and Ariel. My name's Nicole, and my job is books. I'm a librarian, and I love my job. I really, really do. I get to work on fun projects and help my community and talk about books with people. Like, I get paid to do this. It's great. And I've loved reading for as long as I can remember, so building a career around books seemed like a good idea at the time. However, that spark for reading has dimmed because I'm doing a lot of required reading for book clubs and other events for work. So I'm wondering, how do I find and keep up that excitement and love for books and reading when it's tied directly to my job, when it starts to feel like a chore rather than something fun and relaxing? Is a job change worth it? I don't know. Any advice is appreciated.
This is an interesting little problem we got on our hands,
yeah.
Nicole.
Scary problem.
Okay. Nicole is a librarian. Nicole loves her job. Nicole feels that the spark for reading has died. Nicole wants to hear our advice on how she may keep the love alive. And then at the end, she just tacks on, is a job change worth it?
I know, that was dramatic.
I played this clip for Connor because we were having lunch and I was like, oh, I still have 2 of these I have to prep for. Let's listen to, and so we listened to this one. And Connor was like, well, first of all, she should not change her job. I was like, right? And he's like, being a librarian is a wonderful job. I was like, it really is. And Connor was a library technician, worked in libraries for a long time. So I feel like he's a voice of authority on that matter.
Yes.
And because of that job, I met a lot of librarians. I think that being a librarian is a really beautiful job. There's a lot of different contexts in which you can be a librarian, but like, it's a really good job. So and you said you love your job. So forget changing your job. We can fix this in different ways. What do you think, Raylene? How do you think that she can keep her love alive?
I mean, it's tough because you kind of mentioned having lots of like, a lot of reading that is like tied to work. That kind of sounds like you can't like stop or you can't like get away from a little bit. And that kind of scared me a little. Because back when I was still like young and, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I really thought it would be fun to get into like the book publishing industry and like be an editor or something. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, if my whole job is reading, will I still like reading? And that idea scared me enough that I didn't even pursue it any further. Like I was just like, you know what? I don't think it's right for me. But the fact that you've done it, like you can handle it, clearly. That's why you're a librarian and like you've got this. So I just want to start by saying you've got this, Nicole. I think you can handle it. But I'm just wondering if there is a way to like dial back some of the work related reading. Cuz I don't really know, like I've never been a librarian, so I don't know how much is involved, but like you did mention book clubs as well.
What kind of librarian?
Yeah, you also mentioned book clubs, so I'm wondering if there's a way to maybe cut something out, like cut out one little area of that so that you have more time for your own reading. Like, I think if there's a way to balance out the work and the personal reading, that's really the key, I think, is finding some way to just balance it out. Because you love recommending books to people. You said that. Right. So obviously reading is something you still love and enjoy, but yeah, I don't really know. This one kind of bamboozled me a little bit, honestly.
It is. It's a big one. Okay. What I wrote down was bullet point number 1. It's not going to get better job-wise. Like, if you already love this job, I don't think there's going to be a better job waiting for you out there. So I was like, we're moving on. You're keeping this job, Nicole. I wrote, could you possibly at work suggest programming that could make you super jazzed? So again, this really depends on what kind of librarian you are, what kind of a situation you're in. Like, I know a librarian who, she's retired now, but she was a science and engineering librarian. Like, all of the books that she took care of were all science, engineering, and medicine based or whatever. So she wasn't reading those books. Like, she, you know what I mean? She just like happened to run this library of those books for students and stuff. So obviously it depends what kind of librarian you are, but if there's a way that you could suggest programming, like, could you host a book club, but is all books that you really want to be reading?
Right.
Or is there like a staff picks section at your library that like you could be influencing, like that might be fun. So maybe if there's a way that you can like insert some of your more personal reading at work so that you can kind of make it work. That's how I get away with everything. Yeah. Like my entire life is like, how do I make this count as work? Like with the mini truck.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I make videos about it, now it's my job.
There you go.
And so now I can do this because now I can afford to do it. But then I was thinking, maybe there is no way to make this work at work.
Yeah.
So can you read in a way that really differentiates it from work? So for example, like find somewhere outside in nature, because I'm assuming you work inside of a library. Mm-hmm. So outside in a park would be really different, or by the beach, or somewhere really different from your job. Or I wrote, or at a cocktail bar, like make it fancy and cute and intentional. And I was like, I know that that's weird, but clearly what you need is a really big difference between your work reading and your life reading. Yeah. And so if you set these up as little dates with yourself and you're like, no, I it's important to me that once a week I go to the beach and I sit there and I read, and it's my own moment outside of work and it has nothing to work, maybe that would help. I wrote, what do you love about reading and what is it that you actually miss? Because I feel like I actually, when I listened back to the message, I was like, I'm not exactly sure what it is. The love of reading. I was like, what do you exactly mean by that? Because if what you mean is like, you really miss wanting to read a lot. Yeah. I have a theory that this really goes in waves. Like there are periods of your life where you're like more into reading than other periods, and you might just be in a really busy work period of your life, and as adults it's so much harder to find the time to read than it was when we were teenagers or in university, right? So you might just be in that wave and you can just like accept that, and accepting it for me makes it so much easier. I'm like, yeah, I'm not in a reading time of my life, but that's okay, I'll get back to it later. Like remove the pressure. But what else could it be that you miss about reading? Like, is it going to bookshops? Is it bookish friends? Is it like, what is the actual thing that you miss? Is it just spending time reading things that aren't for work? Because again, then you could just like nail that down and be like, oh, okay, that's the thing that I miss. And so that's the thing that I have to prioritize. Yeah. But my final suggestion, okay, and I actually think this is the most important one. And I'm realizing it's gotten really dark here because I moved this curtain here a minute ago, and now left, right, and center. Here we go. Oh, there we go. More light, more light. Life is good again. My final suggestion. Maybe it's time to create a niche in your life that has absolutely nothing to do with books. Because it kind of sounds to me like you're like me, or you're like Raylene, where when we were teenagers, our entire lives were about reading. And then we became adults and our entire lives were about reading. For Raylene, it was literally working at a bookshop. Yeah. For me, it was doing an English degree. Like we were both just like, our entire lives are reading. Then when reading becomes stressful because working at a bookshop is stressful, or doing an English degree is stressful, now it's kind of ruining your fun thing as well. Yeah. So if you just commit hard into something else, you can escape to something else. And maybe right now is a time in your life when reading is a work thing. And so I wrote, so now you need to join a circus group or a bowling league, or try and train for a triathlon so that you have more variety, and then maybe it'll make books at the library feel a bit more fresh again. Because if everything in your life is about reading and books, it can be a little exhausting, and I can see how that would dry up a little bit. So maybe actually the solution to this problem is diverting your attention to a new hobby or activity.
Yeah, because I also feel
so that when you are reading, it feels special.
I was just gonna say, yeah, because like make yourself miss reading maybe a little bit. Like
exactly.
Because if all you do is one activity, you almost like don't get excited for it anymore because it doesn't feel special. It's sort of like, imagine you used to like eat out for every single meal, and then you suddenly only eat out once a month or something. That will feel extra special when you go out and do that, because you've, you diverted your attention or whatever you said. So
totally.
I think that's smart. I think finding other hobbies is, I mean, and I agree, because that's what I've been doing this year. finding other hobbies and like using your time in different ways, it really does make me like, when I do sit down to read, it feels special. Like it feels like an event. It's not just like something that I do every day. Like, oh yeah, I read every day. Like, right, you know, I spend my 15 minutes or whatever. Now it's like, no, like it's more of like I'm more intentional about what I'm reading. And it's it's nice. It's kind of eye-opening, actually, to just be like, yeah, wait, I only have an hour to read like the whole week. I'm going to make it worth it, you know?
Exactly. No, that's exactly what I mean. So I actually was like, I think my advice is to become a pro league bowler. Because then when you come home exhausted from bowling, you're like, hey, I have 15 minutes I can read right now. This is going to be so nice. It's going to make you appreciate it so much more. And just, I think a balance in life is good. Like, if your job is about books, your hobby is about books, your, like, other hobby is writing books. Like, if everything is the same, it can become exhausting. And then when one thing becomes too much, because they're so intertwingled, as I like to say, they all become really stressful. So you need another outlet. For me, recently, that's been, like, playing piano. I've been taking piano lessons again, which is really fun. And it's just this completely unrelated thing in my life. Because reading is, I have a really interest, so it's sort of similar to what you're saying, Nicole. With reading, reading is my job in some ways because of this podcast.
Yeah,
like, if I don't read, I'm like, God damn it, what am I going to talk about on the podcast? And so I actually get stressed, and that stress causes me to read, but then it can be like a little bit of a negative moment.
Yeah.
Not usually, but sometimes. And so because of that, I'm like, I'm going to play piano. I'm just going to take a break and go do something else. I don't need to always be doing the same thing. So there you go. Thank you, Nicole, for your problem. We hope that we helped.